Church service Christmas snacks gone. Amina sat on a small wooden stool outside their house, her legs swinging as she sniffed the air. The sweet smell of jollof rice and fried chicken floated from the neighbors' houses, mixing with the spicy aroma of goat meat pepper soup bubbling in her mother's pot. She closed her eyes and sighed. This Christmas smells like heaven. Her younger brother Musa ran past her with a stick in his hand, pretending to fight invisible enemies. He stopped and looked at her. Amina, all you ever think about is food, he said, shaking his head. And so, what else is Christmas for? Amina replied, grinning. Musa laughed. You better be careful. One day your belly will burst. Amina rolled her eyes. I beg you, leave me oh. If my belly bursts, at least it will be full of good food. Inside the house, their mother called out, Amina, come and help me slice these onions. Amina groaned. But Mama, I just want to enjoy Christmas smells. You can enjoy the smells while you work, her mother replied, not even looking up from the steaming pot of soup. Amina stood up reluctantly, muttering under her breath, why is it that I always have to do the hard work? She grabbed the knife and stood beside her mother, slicing the onions as slowly as she could. Her best friend Kemi appeared at the doorway, holding a bowl of chin-chin. Amina, come and taste the chin-chin my mom just fried. Amina's eyes lit up. She dropped the knife and dashed to the door. I'm coming, she yelled. Her mother frowned. Where do you think you are going? Finish slicing these onions first. But Mama Kemi brought chin-chin, Amina whined. You eat chin-chin later, her mother said firmly. If you don't help me now, there will be no food to eat later. Amina pouted and went back to her onions. This is not fair, she muttered, but deep down she knew her mother was right. Still, as she walked, she made a plan in her head. Later today I'll visit Miss Ajoke's bakery, she whispered to herself with a sly smile. Her meat pies are calling my name. The sun was starting to set as Amina strolled down the busy street. Children were playing with firecrackers, their laughter filling the air. White traders shouted, calling people to buy their goods. The whole town smelled like Christmas, fried chicken, roasted corn, and akara. But one smell stood out to Amina, stopping her right in her tracks. She sniffed the air deeply. Is that meat pie? She whispered, her eyes widening. Ahead of her was Miss Ajoke's bakery, the small windows fogged up from the heat inside. Through the glass, Amina could see trays of golden brown meat pie cooling on a table. She walked closer, her heart beating faster with excitement. Oh, they look so good, she said to herself, pressing her nose against the window. The smell was even stronger now, and her stomach gave a loud growl. Just then, the bakery door opened, and Miss Ajoke stepped out, wiping her hands on her apron. She looked around, nodded to herself, and walked off towards the nearby market, leaving the door slightly ajar. Amina's eyes widened. She left the door open, she muttered, her mind racing. She looked around the street, checking if anyone was watching her. Most people were too busy with their own activities to notice her standing there. Her best friend Kemi appeared out of nowhere, chewing on a piece of sugar cane. Amina, what are you doing here? Amina jumped, startled. Ah, Kemi, don't scare me like that too. Kemi raised an eyebrow. Why are you standing here like you want to rob the place? I'm not robbing anything, Amina whispered defensively. I'm just admiring the meat pies. Kemi laughed. You and food. Just go home before you do something silly. She waved and walked off, shaking her head. Nobody will even notice. Her feet moved before her brain could stop them. She tiptoed to the door and peeked inside. The bakery was warm and smelled like paradise. Trays of meat pies sat on the table, golden and perfect. She could almost hear them calling her name. Amina, Amina, come and eat me, she imagined the pies saying. She giggled softly to herself. Okay, just one. She stepped inside, her heart pounding like a drum. The pies looked even better up close. Carefully, she reached out, picked up one, and took a big bite. The buttery crust melted in her mouth, and the spicy meat fillings made her close her eyes in happiness. This is the best meat pie ever, she said, her voice muffled by the food in her mouth. But as she thrilled, she glanced back at the door. It was still open. But what if someone came back? She froze for a moment, thinking about what her mother would say if she got caught. Just one more, she whispered to herself. Then I will leave. She grabbed another pie, then another, completely losing track of time and the number she had eaten. She didn't even notice when the door slowly swung shut behind her, clicking softly as it locked. Amina sat on the floor of the bakery, crumbs scattered around her, her stomach full and her heart pounding. She looked at the trays of meat pies and gasped. Ah, how did I eat this many? She whispered, clutching her belly. She stood up and walked quickly to the door, wiping her hands on her dress. Time to go before anyone comes back, she muttered. She pulled the handle, but the door didn't budge. Huh? She said, pulling harder. The door stayed shut. Panic began to creep in. She yanked the handle again and again, but it was no use. No, 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 don't do this to me. She ran to the window and peered outside. The street was still busy, but nobody seemed to notice her. She banged lightly on the glass. Somebody help me, she whispered loudly, afraid to shout too much in case someone heard her and told her mother. Amina sat back down, her hands on her head. What do I do now? If Mr. Joker finds me here, I'm finished. She imagined her mother's angry face and shivered. She paced the bakery, searching for another way out. The back door was locked too, and the small windows were too high for her to climb through. Defeated, she sank to the floor again. Maybe if I just wait, Mr. Joker will come back and let me out, she said, trying to convince herself. She glanced at the trays again, but when she sees all the pies I ate, she groaned and buried her face in her hands. The warm bakery, combined with her full stomach, made her feel sleepy. She yawned. Just a little nap, she murmured, curling up in the corner. I'll think of a plan when I wake up. Before she knew it, her eyes closed and she drifted off to sleep. The bakery grew quiet, except for the soft hum of the oven. Outside, the sun set completely and the streetlights flickered on. The town was alive with Christmas cheer. But inside the bakery, Amina slept soundly, dreaming of even more meat pies, unaware of the trouble that awaited her in the morning. The first rays of sunlight crept through the bakery windows, lighting up the trays of half-eaten meat pies. Miss Ajoke walked briskly toward the bakery with the pastor by her side, a checklist in the pastor's hand. We need to make sure everything is ready for the church event, Miss Ajoke said. The pies are the main attraction. The pastor nodded. I'm sure they'll be perfect as always. Everyone loves their baking. Miss Ajoke smiled proudly as she unlocked the door and stepped inside. Her smile quickly vanished. What in the name of heaven is this? She cried, her voice echoing through the bakery. The pastor followed her in, his brows furrowing as he saw the scene. Crumbs covered the floor, half-empty trays on the table, and in the corner, curled up like a cat, was Amina, snoring softly. Amina, Miss Ajoke shouted, her hands on her hips. Amina stared and slowly opened her eyes. She blinked, confused, then realized where she was. Her heart dropped into her stomach. Oh no, she whispered. Miss Ajoke marched over to her. What are you doing here, young lady? And what happened to my pies? Amina scrambled to her feet, her hands shaking. I can explain, she stammered, avoiding their piercing gazes. The pastor crossed his arms. We're waiting, Amina. Start explaining. Amina swallowed hard, her mouth dry. I was just passing by yesterday, she began, her voice barely above a whisper. And then I smelled the pies and the door was open, so I came inside. I just wanted to taste one, but then you ate half of them, Miss Ajoke finished for her, throwing her hands in the air. Do you know how much work went into those pies? They were for the Christmas service. I'm sorry, Amina said quickly, tears welling up in her eyes. I didn't mean to eat so many. I couldn't stop. Miss Ajoke shook her head, her face a mix of anger and disappointment. You ruined everything, Amina. What are we supposed to do now? The pastor sighed deeply. Amina, this is very serious. You not only disrespected Miss Ajoke's hard work, but you have also put the church event in trouble. Do you understand that? Amina nodded miserably, her head hanging low. Yes, sir. I'm really, really sorry. Miss Ajoke threw up her hands again. Sorry doesn't bake new pies, does it? The pastor held up a hand to calm her. Let's not lose our heads. Amina has to make this right. She will apologize to the church and help bake new pies to replace the ones she ate. Amina's eyes widened. Apologize? In front of everyone? Yes, the pastor said firmly. Christmas is about learning, forgiveness, and making amends. You made a mistake, but now you have to face the consequences. Amina sniffed and nodded again, tears sliding down her cheeks. I'll do it. I'll do whatever it takes to fix this. Miss Ajoke sighed, looking at the crumbs on the floor. You had better mean it, Amina, because you have got a lot of work ahead of you. The pastor nodded. Let's clean up and get started. We have no time to waste. Amina wiped her tears and picked up a broom. As she swept the crumbs away, She whispered to herself, "Why didn't I just stay at home?" The church hall was buzzing with excitement. People were arriving, greeting each other with big smiles, and carrying plates of food for the Christmas celebration. The air was filled with the sound of laughter and music, and outside, children ran around, chasing each other and playing with colorful balloons. Amina stood at the back of the hall, her heart pounding in her chest. She looked around at the happy faces, feeling a lump in her throat. She wasn't ready for what was about to happen. "Are you okay?" Kemi whispered, walking up to her. Amina gave a weak smile. "I guess." Kemi raised an eyebrow. "You don't look okay. What's wrong?" "I have to apologize in front of everyone," Amina said, her voice shaking. "Miss Ajoke and the pastor said I ruined everything, and now I have to tell everyone what I did." Kemi's eyes widened. "Oh no, are you sure you want to do that?" Amina took a deep breath. "I have to. It's the only way to make things right." Just then, Pastor Emmanuel walked up to them, his kind face serious. "Amina," he said gently, "it's time." Amina felt her stomach twist. She glanced at Miss Ajoke, who was standing nearby, arms crossed, watching her closely. Miss Ajoke gave a small nod, as if saying, "It's time for you to make up for what you did." Amina took another deep breath and followed the pastor to the front of the church. The room went quiet as people noticed her. She could feel all their eyes on her, and her cheeks grew warm with embarrassment. When she reached the front, Pastor Emmanuel turned to the congregation and spoke. "Brothers and sisters, before we begin, Amina has something important she wants to say." Amina took a step forward, her legs shaking like jelly. She looked down at the floor, trying to avoid everyone's gaze. Hello everyone. My name is Amina." She paused and cleared her throat. "I did something really bad. I ate all the meat pies Miss Ajoke baked for the Christmas service." There were murmurs in the crowd, and Amina's heart sank even further. She could feel their eyes judging her, but she forced herself to keep talking. "I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to cause trouble. I was hungry, and I just kept eating. I didn't think about how hard Miss Ajoke worked, and I didn't think about how important those pies were." Amina's voice cracked. She wiped a tear from her cheek. "Please forgive me." The pastor smiled gently at her. "Amina, you've made a mistake, but you've taken the first step in fixing it by apologizing. Let's all show her our forgiveness and understanding." The choir remained silent for a moment, and then a few people clapped softly. Amina felt a little lighter, but still nervous. Miss Ajoke stepped forward. "I accept your apology, Amina," Miss Ajoke said, her voice softening. "But you have to work hard to make up for it. Baking these pies wasn't easy, and you need to learn that hard work is the key to earning forgiveness." Amina nodded quickly. "I will help you bake more pies. I promise I will make it right." The pastor looked at the congregation. Amina has shown great courage in admitting her mistake. Let's all remember that Christmas is about learning from our errors and helping one another. With that, Amina felt a little relief. Some people smiled at her, and she even saw a few nods of approval. She wasn't fully forgiven yet, but at least they were giving her a chance to make things right. She walked back to the bakery with Miss Ajoke, wiping away her last tears. Miss Ajoke handed her a cloth and said, "Now, it's time for you to get to work. Let's bake." Amina smiled weakly, knowing it was the beginning of a long day. It was also the beginning of making things better. The church service had finally started, and the air was filled with the sound of singing and clapping as people sang carols in celebration of Christmas. Amina, however, was far from the joyful crowd. She stood next to Miss Ajoke in the bakery, her hands covered in flour as she worked the dough. "Amina, keep kneading the dough properly. It has to be smooth, not too smooth or too hard," Miss Ajoke said, her voice calm but firm. Amina nodded, wiping her forehead with the back of her hand. She was tired, but she knew she had to keep going. The smell of the fresh bread and pies filled the small bakery, reminding her of why she was there. She had to make up for the trouble she caused. "I can't believe I ate so many pies yesterday," Amina muttered under her breath, rolling the dough out flat. "You have learned your lesson, haven't you?" Miss Ajoke asked, glancing at her. "Yes, I have," Amina said quickly. "I shouldn't have sneaked in like that. I should have waited for the pies to be ready." Miss Ajoke gave a small nod. "That's right. It's important to respect people's hard work. Now, we have to make enough pies to replace the ones you ate." Amina felt guilty again, but she didn't say anything. Instead, she rolled the dough and started cutting out circles for the pies. Her hands were sore, but she kept going. After all, it was her mistake, and she needed to fix it. "You are doing well," Miss Ajoke said after a while, giving her a small smile. "It's good to see you working hard. It shows you understand what needs to be done." Amina smiled back, though she was still feeling the weight of the earlier apology. "Thank you, Miss Ajoke. I'm sorry again for what happened. Miss Ajoke didn't reply right away, but Amina could see the kindness in her eyes. It made Amina feel a little better. As they walked together, Amina started to feel a sense of pride in the pies they were making. She could smell the savory feeling of the meat and the buttery crust that was forming in her hands. I'm glad you are doing this with me, Miss Ajoke said as she added some seasoning to the meat. Not everyone would take responsibility like you have. It's hard work, but it's worth it in the end. Amina looked at the trays of meat pies now piled high and ready for baking. I know. I feel better doing this. She wiped her hands on her apron. I really want to make up for what I did. Miss Ajoke smiled softly. That's all everyone can ask for. We all make mistakes, Amina. The important thing is what we do after we've made them. Amina felt a wave of gratitude towards Miss Ajoke. Thank you for letting me help. I promise I won't do anything like this again. You've learned, and that's what matters most, Miss Ajoke said, patting her on the back. Now let's get these pies in the oven so they are ready for the church service. As the pies baked, Amina felt a little lighter. The hard work, the sweat, and even the tiredness had somehow made her feel like she was fixing what she had broken. It wasn't just about the pies anymore. It was about learning to make things right when she made a mistake. And when the smell of fresh golden meat pies filled the air again, Amina knew she had done her best. She was ready to face the people in the church, knowing that she had worked hard to show that she was truly sorry. The church hall buzzed with laughter and joy. People sat in rows eating the food that had been brought in, their plates piled high with jollof rice, fried chicken, and meat pies. Amina felt a strange mix of nervousness and happiness as she walked back to her seat, her hands still warm from handing out the pies. The crowd had clapped for her, and now as she settled into a chair near her mother, she could feel the weight of the moment slowly lifting from the shoulder. The pies she had baked with Miss Ajoke were almost gone, and people were still talking about how delicious they were. It made Amina smile, knowing she had helped fix the problem she had caused. Those pies were amazing, Kemi said, sitting next to Amina and handing her a plate. You really made up for everything. I'm proud of you. Amina took the plate of jollof rice and nodded, feeling a little embarrassed but grateful. Thanks, Kemi. It was hard work, but I'm glad it worked out. Of course it worked out, Kemi said with a wink. You worked so hard and everyone could see it. Plus, the pies tasted great. Miss Ajoke said you made the best ones yet. Amina smiled wider, the compliment making her feel a little lighter. But even though people had been kind, she still couldn't forget how hard it had been to apologize in front of everyone. She still remembered how her stomach had turned when she faced the congregation. Just then her mother leaned over and put her arm around Amina's shoulder. I'm really proud of you, my daughter, she said, her voice soft but full of warmth. Amina felt her heart flutter with happiness. Really, Mama? Yes, really, her mother said, smiling at her. Not many people will stand in front of a crowd like that and admit their mistakes. You've shown courage, and that's more important than anything. Amina felt her eyes well up with tears, but she blinked them away. I just wanted to fix it, Mama. I didn't want to disappoint anyone anymore. You didn't disappoint anyone, my love, her mother said, giving her a gentle squeeze. We all make mistakes. What matters is that you learn from it and worked hard to make them right. Amina wiped her eyes quickly, smiling through the tears. I'll never do something like that again. I learned my lessons. Her mother chuckled softly. I'm glad to hear that, and I think everyone else has learned something too. Just then, Miss Ajoke walked over, holding a fresh tray of meat pies. She looked at Amina with a proud smile. You did well today, Amina. I can see that you have really understood the lesson. Amina stood up, feeling a rush of pride. Thank you, Miss Ajoke. I couldn't have done it without your help. Miss Ajoke's smile grew. I think you've learned more than just how to bake. You've learned about hard work, responsibility, and what it means to make things right. And for that, I'm proud of you. Amina's heart swelled with happiness. She had started the day feeling like a mistake, but now she felt like she had earned back the trust of her community. She had worked hard to make things better, and in the end, the sweetness of the pies wasn't the only thing that made her feel good. It was knowing that she had done the right thing. She turned to Kemi, who gave her a thumbs up. See, I told you everything will be okay. Amina laughed, wiping the last tear from her cheek. You were right. I'm so glad it worked out. The pastor's voice echoed through the hall, signaling the end of the service. Let us all give thanks for the blessing we have received this year and remember that Christmas is about learning, forgiving, and growing. And when I looked around at the faces of the people in the church, everyone smiling and laughing, she felt a sense of peace wash over her. She had learned a lot this Christmas, not just about baking, but about the importance of second chances, hard work, and most of all, forgiveness. As the congregation stood to sing one final carol, Amina joined in with Kemi, her voice soft but steady, knowing that this Christmas would always be special. It wasn't just about the pies or the gifts, it was about the lessons she will carry with her for the rest of her life.